It wasn't like anything she had talked about in the book, but I just remember afterwards feeling so guilty. I had just done something that was going to change my life forever. Well, come on, Kate. Like, why didn't you just walk away from this? And I couldn't. If I walked away from this, I was walking away from everything I had ever known before, and I just wasn't strong enough for that. They are seizure-like episodes where I pass out, my eyes roll back, and I shake. I didn't know that I had seizures. Looking back on it, I realized that I had a seizure at his house one time. When I was kind of coming to, I realized that I was naked from the waist down, and he was on top of me, and he jumps off of me and gets clothes on, and he's dressing me. I was like, what happened? What was that? And he goes, oh, well, we were just doing an session, and you just had a really good orgasm. You just I think we really had a breakthrough. And he's and you just passed out. He took my virginity that day.
Oh my gosh, I'm sorry.
And I just knew, I knew deep down in my soul something felt different about me. And so I went and I took a pregnancy test. He admitted to me that he had done it to get me pregnant so that we would have a reason to get married.
Mine is the only voice.
Wow. What have I been doing?
Lay down my autonomy.
After that, it got very dark very quickly.
Hey, my name is Shalise, and this is Cults to Consciousness, where we discuss leaving high-demand religions or organizations and finding healing and independence through awareness and true individual sovereignty. As always, if you're only listening on those podcast platforms and you'd like to see our faces and potential photos we put up on the screen, go to our YouTube at Cults to Consciousness. It's the best way to support the podcast because you can interact with the posts, liking, sharing, of course, subscribing are all ways to tell the algorithm to boost it to more people so more people can become aware of these culty situations and potential situations that they may be involved in. Katie's part 1 episode, which you don't necessarily need to watch to enjoy this episode, but you can go back if you choose to. We talked about the ways in which she didn't actually join the OneTaste cult, the orgasm cult, but she was severely affected by it because of the person who she was dating who was involved in the cult and the harmful ideology that trickled down into their relationship and ultimately led to some more trauma, unfortunately, for Katie. So in the first episode, we talked about how she grew up Mormon, how this groomed her into a submissive yes woman, how she was in the young single adults ward and essentially was kind of pushed into dating this guy she didn't really want to, who was involved in OneTaste. So the first episode talks about why she was so susceptible to almost joining a second cult and how it impacted her and her decisions. In this episode, we're going to go into more of the ways being outside of OneTaste harmed her, how she was able to go to BYU-Idaho, which is one of the most strict Mormon schools you can go to, Brigham Young University, and how she was unfairly treated there and was able to get out of Mormonism completely. So thank you guys so much for joining us. Here we go.
So that was how he introduced OneTaste to me. And I didn't even know it was an organization or a cult or anything like that. I just thought it was this weird practice that people did to work through sexual trauma. And I thought it was going to be totally enlightening. And so he waited until I said one day, that I think I wanted to try it. And so we did an orgasmic meditation session. And if I'm being completely honest, I don't even remember what happened before or what happened during, but I just remember afterwards feeling so guilty and feeling like I had just done something that was going to change my life forever. It wasn't like anything she had talked about in the book. It wasn't empowering. It didn't feel good. It wasn't any of that. It just felt gross and it just felt wrong. And I felt like it brought up more of my trauma almost because I didn't really want to. And the whole time I wanted to say, stop, I don't want to do this anymore. But I felt so much pressure to be well, I'm already here. We might as well just finish it and see if it gets better. And it didn't. But he was on such a high from it. And he was so proud of himself and he was so happy. And I remember afterwards, he like jumps off the bed and he's like, "Oh my gosh, that was great. Don't you just feel so much better about yourself? And don't you just feel like I really felt like your energy released there and during this part and this part, and it was just so great." And he's like describing all of this, and I was like, I was totally dissociated throughout that whole thing. So yeah, I guess if you think that's what happened, because supposedly he had done that before. I don't know. It was just, by then I felt so obligated to just keep going out with him because I felt like I had shared such a vulnerable part of me with him that I was now trauma bonded. You know, I couldn't leave. I couldn't show that to anyone else. And how would I ever tell somebody else that I had had those experiences before with another person? You know, no Mormon man wants somebody who's not a virgin. No good, respecting elders quorum faithful person wants somebody who's done that before, who showed those parts of herself to somebody willingly. So I just felt stuck.
For additional context, masturbation is not allowed in Mormonism, and it even goes as far to say, and I know this because I got the handout from my bishop in the singles ward, was that you're not even supposed to linger while you hug. Don't hug more than 3 seconds. Don't lay down with each other. Don't kiss laying down. Don't kiss more than 3 seconds. If it should be a peck.
No necking, no heavy petting.
No heavy petting, whatever that means. Don't even be alone together. You're not allowed in their bedroom. All of these rules. So doing something like orgasmic meditation is a huge no. And do you think that's where all of those feelings of, well, first of all, you have your actual sexual trauma that is still inside of you, you haven't processed it, on top of the extreme guilt and shame for even going that far with somebody? Do you think that's why you felt like it was so gross and wrong?
I think it was also just the fact that he was like 27 and like something inside of me knew that that was like gross and wrong. Like,
Okay.
something
Just
inside of me
all of the
knew that he was
circumstances.
predatory. Yeah. And then
Yeah.
also, like, of course, the guilt and shame that I already felt growing up in such a strict environment didn't make it any better. If anything, that made it so that a bad situation was made worse because then I felt stuck. I felt like I couldn't tell anybody. I felt like I couldn't get out of it. I felt like I had to just stay there. And I kind of convinced myself that, yeah, this was just the person I was going to be with, and this was the choice that I made. And I had to just, it wasn't going to be so bad. I mean, he was the elders quorum president, and he was a good guy, and he had life experience, and I did kind of like him, like I kind of, my poor little 18-year-old self, I really thought that that was going to be the rest of my life because I had made that choice to do something sexual with him in an effort to heal my own trauma.
Yeah, feeling completely trapped.
And he knew that. And he completely exploited that. And I remember, like, anytime I would get angry or upset, he would almost praise me for that. Like, he would make sure that I was in such a heightened emotional state all the time so that I couldn't really logic myself out of it. He was always so calm and so soft spoken, and he never talked down to me. That was the thing. He never talked down to me. He always convinced me that it was my idea. And I think that's what's so harmful about high control groups and high control people is, like, so many people say, like, well, why didn't you just leave? Well, that's a red flag. Well, come on, Kate. Like, why didn't you just walk away from this? And I couldn't. There were so many things and so many ways that he manipulated that situation to where I literally felt like it was life or death. Like, if I walked away from this, I was walking away from everything I had ever known before, and I just wasn't strong enough for that.
Didn't he tell you he was the only person who could heal your trauma?
Yeah, he did. He told me that he was the only person who would ever understand me. He groomed me to not tell anybody because he said, he never, like, threatened me. He never said, like, oh, if you tell anybody, then, like, I'm going to do this to you or whatever. He would just cry a lot. And he would say, like, oh, well, I just don't want you to be shamed anymore, because I know the way that people talk about you. And I defend you all the time, but I just don't want people to do that to you anymore. And I know that other people don't understand what you're going through, but I do because I've been through it. And I've done all of this work like deconstructing, and the church is great, but this is what I did to get my faith back and to come back from this awful experience. And so I just want to help you because I love you. Yeah, so he very much made me feel extremely isolated. Like he was the only person that would ever understand me. And like that was all that I deserved. I very much felt like that was all that I deserved. I felt lucky that someone in the church even wanted me because I had been told that I would have to work so hard to hide my past, and that, I would be blessed if there was a Mormon man that would settle for someone like me.
Ugh, gross, that sentence. I would be blessed if a Mormon man would settle for me is, it's so heartbreaking. I also want it to be known that OneTaste, the way, if you watch the documentary, the way that they perceive trauma is basically you brought it into your life and, you shouldn't even, like, there's nothing to heal from. What was the scene? Do you remember where it's an actual recording of her saying, oh no, I got raped and all I got was this sad story. Do you remember that from the
Yeah, I
it was
do. I
something
do
like
remember
that.
that.
I screamed at the TV. I was like, "What?"
I
It just
cried. I cried through
yeah.
that whole documentary because it
Ugh.
was, well, like, actually, that was the point that I kind of put the pieces together of this puzzle of like, oh my God, this is what I was like a part of. Because I always knew he was weird and I always knew that there was like something else going on, but I didn't know what it was.
Mhm.
And so I watched that documentary on Netflix and I was like, I literally paused the TV and I looked at Vi and I said, oh my God, this is what Dallin was part of. And I literally just like sobbed. And I looked at me and she's like, yeah, because she had dated him too. And she's like, yeah, no, this is. And so we watched the rest of the documentary, and the whole time we're like taking notes and we're like, yeah, this is what he said. This is what he did. This was like the books that he gave us to read. And these were the type of poems that he wrote. And this was the wording that he used. And like all of the ways that Nicole Daydon used to manipulate the people that she, that were part of her organization. He used those on me.
Mhm. I guess I wanted people to understand that this orgasmic meditation thing is extremely harmful in its teachings, and that was trickling down to you directly. So
Yeah.
it's not just let's empower you by helping you explore your sexuality, it's actively harming you through these methods that he was taught, that he was brainwashed into believing, and giving those to you. So he was even asking you to pay for his classes, right?
What happened was he asked me to go to California with him. And he was broke. He was living in his parents' basement in literally like a mother-in-law's suite, like an add-on to his parents' house. And he said that he had lived in the Bay Area before during summer sales and he wanted to move back there. And he was asking me to give him finances or to use some of my college funds so that he could go back there and then also enroll in some of these classes. And he never told me what the classes were, but he wanted to go back to these classes and learn more about how to deal with trauma. He wanted to be a therapist, heaven forbid.
Yikes, learning how to be a therapist through these
Yeah.
classes.
Through these classes specifically, yeah, he wanted to be a
Mm.
sex therapist.
Oh,
And so he
wow.
wanted me to like help him. He said he would pay me back. He never did. I don't think I sent him a whole lot of money. I think I maybe gave him $100 or $200, which would cover maybe one class because they were super expensive. He never paid me back, but then again, I didn't have much money to give him anyway. And thank goodness he did try really hard to convince me to give him more. But thank goodness I had some sense of goals, because I was like, no, this is my college money. And I didn't give him a whole lot. Like I said, I think I only gave him like a couple $100. And I don't know where that went, to be honest. Don't know where that went. Don't know what it went to. Don't know. Don't really care.
So how long were you dating him before it all imploded?
So I dated him from May of 2021 all the way to the end of January 2022. So a good like 7 months maybe. Yeah, which doesn't seem like a long time, but to an 18-year-old, that's a long time. That's like half a year. And it was like the longest summer of my life, because it was the summer before I went to college. And it's crazy how quickly predators can manipulate situations, because again, 7 months doesn't seem like that long. It doesn't seem like I could have reconstructed my whole life existence around this guy, but he did. He did get me to do it. So yeah, we dated for about 7 months, and then it wasn't until I was actually in college that I broke things off with him, because I was very set that I did not want to move to California. I did not want to move. I did not want to stay in Farmington. I wanted to go to school, and I wanted to go to BYU. And so he kind of changed his plans a little bit and said that he was going to move up to school with me so that we could still get married. And but he never ended up scraping the money together to even do that. So
Can we talk about the proposal?
yeah, we can talk about the proposal. Which proposal? Because there were several.
Wait, really?
Yeah. So there were like several unofficial proposals where he would be like, oh yeah, we're going to get married. And he like tried to be cutesy, because on the rare occasion that he did get me food, he'd like wrap the straw wrapper into like a little ring, and he'd like put it on my finger and be like, I'm going to marry you someday. Love you so much. So there were those. But the first like actual proposal with like a ring, I want to say it was like early October. I was at his parents' house, because I was always at his parents' house. And one day he like got a package, and I was like, oh, well, what is it? And he opens it up right there at the kitchen table in front of his whole family. And his mom was like pulling a casserole out of the oven. His whole family's like at the table doing whatever, getting ready for dinner. And he opens it up and he pulls out this little ring box. And he's like, do you want to see it? And I was like, see what? Like, I was so in shock. And he like opens up the little box and he's like, close your eyes, I'm gonna put it on your finger. And like his mom turns around with like this casserole and she drops it and she goes, Jacqueline, what are you doing? And he goes, Mom, it's her ring. And I was like, what? And so I just start crying out of sheer like horror that this is even happening. And he like puts it on my finger and he's like, we're gonna get married. And he's like, he didn't even ask me, he just goes, we're gonna get married. And he like grabs my hand and he like turns to his like family and he's like, we decided that we're gonna get married. And everybody starts like awkwardly like clapping, because like what? And I'm just sitting there and I was like, what just happened? And I looked down at the ring and it was a ring I had seen at Walmart. And it had like this little
Poor guy, he's doing his best.
and it had like this little pink rose on it with like one little diamond in it. And so I turned to him and I go, I don't think I want to get married right now. And what I really wanted to do was like run out of the room and never talk to him again. And then he looked at me and he goes, and he was just like in shock and he looked like he was about to cry. And I was like, well, I mean, I don't want to get married like right now. Because again, I was such a people pleaser. And his whole family's there. And his whole family's looking at me and looking at him. And I'm looking at this ring that I just got, this old Walmart ring. And I think I just blacked out after that. I think we just had dinner. And like that was that. After everything, when I went back to my house and he like dropped me off, I gave him back the ring and I was like, look, I love you. Ew. Ew. It makes me shudder just thinking about that I said that. But I was like, I love you and I do want to marry you, but just like not right now. Like I need some time and I don't think I'm ready for this. And I think I kind of gave the like, I need to talk to my parents excuse. Because one thing that my parents did really well, and one thing that I'm going to tell my kids is that my parents always told me, like, you can always use us as an excuse to get out of a situation. If you don't want to be in a situation, if something's awkward, if something's weird, you can make us the bad guys of your story. That's fine.
Uh-huh.
And so I literally was like, I need to talk to my mom because she'd be so mad. And I was like, and I don't want to just like show up with like a ring or whatever. And he was like so sad and he like hung his head and like went back to the car and was all like puppy dog eyes and whatever. It was a few days like after that we had kind of talked about it on and off, and we had talked about like, okay, well maybe we'll get married like after I go to college. Well, maybe we'll get married like, you know, what's the timeline of things. And I think it was about a week later, like mid-October. So context, I have a seizure disorder. My seizure disorder is called psychogenic non-epileptic seizures. So they're non-epileptic, but they are seizure-like episodes where I like pass out, my eyes roll back, and I like shake. I didn't know that I had seizures. A lot of times people would just say that I like passed out. Nobody ever told me that I like had seizures or anything. I didn't get diagnosed until halfway through college. Looking back on it, I realized that I had a seizure at his house one time. When I was kind of coming to, I realized that I was naked from the waist down and he was on top of me and he was like in me, like penetration. And um this is so awful to say. And I'm sorry for laughing, but I think it's like a coping mechanism because, like, even just remembering it is so hard for me to talk about. His mom walked in, and I remember hearing the door open, and I'm all fuzzy headed and like not fully coherent, and she screams super loud and slams the door, and I hear her like run up the stairs and he like jumps off of me and like gets clothes on and he's like dressing me and like all this stuff, and he's like, I was like, what happened, like what was that? And he goes, oh well, we were just doing like an session and you just had like a really good like orgasm, like you just like, I think we really had like a breakthrough. And he's like, and you just like passed out, and I think it was just like so hard on your body that you just passed out and you totally had this whole like experience. What was it like? Did you have like a dream? Did you like, what did you see? And he's like talking about this and I was like, I just feel like I just need some water and maybe a snack because I just, again, I had just had a seizure and so I didn't know what was going on. And we went upstairs and his parents were sitting in the living room and they told us to sit down, and his mom is like uncontrollably sobbing, and his dad, Mr. Bishop, Dr. Man, is sitting there all, you know, in his little doctor chair, and he just goes, I know you guys have talked about getting married, but you know, there are things that I expect you to respect in our house. And he starts giving me this whole talk about not being promiscuous and how if we want to get married in the temple, then I can't be doing that and we can't be doing that. And Dallin's just, again, he just like starts crying and he's like, oh, I'm so sorry, Dad. Like, and I'll go tell the bishop right now. And he like walks out of the room and goes and calls the YSA bishop and sets up a meeting for both of us. Throughout this whole process, again, I'm still like halfway coherent, and I'm like, I don't even know what's going on. Did they find out about like the oming sessions, which again is like bad, that's not good
According to Mormonism.
according
Have
to
to throw that in
Mormonism.
there.
Yeah.
But I also want to point out that there is no penetration in orgasmic meditation. So
Mhm.
he clearly knew what was going on. He clearly knew that you were passed out. And this doesn't make it any better or different. But had you had sex prior to that, or was that the first time?
He took my virginity that day.
Oh my gosh, I'm sorry. I'm sorry.
So I didn't realize fully what had happened in that experience until 5 weeks later, 6 weeks later, I missed a period. And so I just knew, like, I knew deep down in my soul something felt different about me. And so I went and I took a pregnancy test at work because I didn't want my parents to find it. And I was pregnant. And I was just devastated, you know. And it still is really hard to like talk about because like I had wanted to be a mom for so long, but that wasn't how I wanted it to be.
Yeah.
I went and I told my parents, I think a couple days later. My parents, I think my dad was just in shock. He didn't really say anything. And my mom just went into like full denial and was like, no, you're not. You're lying. You just want to marry him. So like, I don't believe you. And that was the end of that conversation. Like 2 days after that, we actually were going to Idaho over Thanksgiving break to go tour the campus because I was supposed to go to BYU in January. And so I remember like the whole way up there, my mom was telling me, and she was just praying out loud. She was like, and please let Katie get her period so that she can go to college because she needs this opportunity and all this stuff. And she was telling me like the whole time up there, she was like, you better hope that it was a false positive because this, that, and the other, and you're going to go up to campus and you're going to walk around and you're going to see that this is where you're supposed to go and this is not the life I want for you. And I mean, that wasn't the life anybody wanted for me. That wasn't the life I wanted for me. But at the same time, I couldn't do anything about it. And I personally, I didn't believe in abortion back then because that's a huge no in the church. I didn't even know that that was an option. I think even if it had been an option, I don't think I would have been able to do it because, again, I still wanted to be a mom. And I felt like that child inside of me didn't deserve to not exist because of the circumstance in which it was brought into the world. And so I think even if I would have had the option, I still would have stayed pregnant and I still would have kept the baby. But while I was up there at, BYU-Idaho, touring this college, I just felt so sick. And I was so sick and I couldn't eat for like 3 days. And I didn't know what was going on. And again, I just thought it was like the spirit or whatever telling me that I had made a bad decision. I was told that guilt was a gift because it was the spirit telling you that you needed to change something in your life.
Oh my God. No, it was the church
Yeah.
telling you needed to change something in your life.
Yeah. So I just felt this like dark cloud over me that whole time. I wasn't even like paying attention on the tour. I couldn't even be excited for myself. College tours are supposed to be exciting. And my whole family was there. And I remember my mom telling me like every chance she got, she's like, you better be happy. We're here for you. We didn't have to come on this trip. And you're lucky that we're even here and all this stuff. And so I'm like trying to put a smile on and I'm trying to be happy and I just couldn't. And that night after we toured the campus and everything, I woke up and I just felt like this awful, awful pain. And I got up and I went into the little hotel bathroom and I shut the door and I kept all the lights off because I didn't want anybody to know I was in there. and I miscarried. So there in the hotel bathtub, I just miscarried. And I didn't tell anyone, and I didn't say anything. And then the next morning, I went up to my mom, and I didn't want to say that I miscarried. And so all I did was just say, Mom, where did you pack the pads and tampons? Because I think I started my period.
Oh my gosh.
And my mom bursts into tears and gets down on her knees and just starts praying, like, oh, we're so grateful and thank goodness, and you are so blessed that you got this second chance at life. She just like cried and cried the whole way home and told me how grateful she was. And then she goes, and I just love you so much, and I'm just so proud of you, and you're gonna go to college and it's gonna be okay, and everything's great and everything's wonderful. And I knew it was a false positive. I knew that Heavenly Father wouldn't do that to you.
Oh.
So we went back home, and I told him that I miscarried. And obviously I was upset about it, but I think he was more upset about it than I was, because he obviously had done it. He admitted to me that he had done it to get me pregnant so that we would have a reason to get married.
Horrific.
Yeah.
I just have to put to words. He admitted that he raped you to get you pregnant, to entrap you. I wanted that sentence to be in that language and very clear, not, oh, I wanted to have a baby so we could get married and be together forever. No, this is very dark, very sinister, very intentional. And I think using that proper language is important for this context, for everybody to hear that. I also wanted to say I'm so sorry that you miscarried, that you had no support, that you were doing that all on your own. You were carrying that burden, that physical pain. And I'm trying not to cry myself. I'm so sorry that you had to go through that and you had no one to help you.
I want to say it's okay, but I feel like it's not.
It's not okay. And it's just me seeing you and validating you, and you just, I mean, I don't want to tell you how to do it. Just accept it. In Mormonism, we're told, oh no, like, don't accept the compliments. Don't be vain. Don't be like, oh, it's fine. It's like, oh, I hate that whole thing about Mormonism. It really sucks.
I know, the whole niceness culture. I struggle with
Yeah.
that so hard. Like, even now, accepting compliments. Anytime somebody's like says something nice, I'm like, oh, it was nothing. I just am here, and
Yeah.
I just
Be humble. Ugh, gross.
Yeah.
Wow.
So yeah,
Yeah.
that was the big kicker of the story. After that, it was just kind of a whirlwind. My grandma ended up passing away as well, very unexpectedly, and that was hard because we lived right next door to my grandparents. I mean, it was my mom's mom that passed away, and so that was extremely hard, because when someone passes away in Mormonism, you have the funeral and then you dedicate the grave. And then for the entire rest of forever, I still have people tell me this. Nobody really allows you to be sad about it. They just kind of say, well, you're going to see them again, and it's okay because she made covenants in the temple, and
Yeah.
you're going to get to see her because you guys have an eternal family.
They sidestep the grief because
Yeah.
they've been told and conditioned that it doesn't matter. Suffer in this life, have eternal life. Just ignore it. Just be happy. It's fine.
Mm-hmm. Endure to the end.
Yeah.
Yep.
There's no real outlet for your emotions.
Yeah. But to this day, one of my favorite Bible verses is that Jesus wept. Because even Jesus, the Savior of the world, the most perfect person to ever live, wept. And he cried at Lazarus' grave. Even though he knew better than anyone there that there would be a happy ending. You know, Jesus still wept. And so that's something that I try to live by now, is you're still able to feel emotions, and you're still able to be sad, and you're still valid in that.
Yeah.
Even when you know there's going to be a happy ending, or even when you believe that there's something better coming, you can still feel sad and angry, and you can still go through grief, and that's healthy to go through grief. So during that whole time, I was just so caught up in like singing at the funeral. Yes, I sang at my own grandma's funeral, and it was just as traumatic as anybody would think it would be, because I literally just stood up at the pulpit and like sobbed the whole time. I don't think I sang a single word. And he was there at the funeral.
This was after you broke up?
Yeah, this was right before I went to college. And so we were kind of broken up, but we were like still talking, and he still wanted to be friends. And so he was still there. And I was still going to the YSA ward, so I still saw him all the time. And then I went to school. And while I was in school, he proposed again, and he sent me the ring. He mailed it to me, and he proposed again, like over FaceTime this time.
Oh my gosh.
And I think, again, I was just so broken, and I was so like deep in that trauma and in that web of lies that he had built, that I didn't know how to get out of it. And so I just said, like, yeah, sure, I'll marry you. Like, okay. And I wore that ring like the whole first semester of college. It wasn't until I met my best friend Jane. We were roommates our first semester. She heard me crying in my dorm one day. And so she like brought me a little hot chocolate and like came into my room, and she asked me what was going on. And I think we had gotten into a fight. I don't even remember what about, but I was just crying, and I like told her all the things, and I was like, yeah, me and my fiance got into a fight, and I don't even think I want to marry him. Like, I'm just not ready. And she looked at me and was like, you don't have to marry him if you don't want to, like, he's kind of ugly.
Oh my gosh.
And she's like, I think you could do like better, And then she was like, but you're like you like make your decisions. Like, I trust you and all these things. But she's like, but just pray about it. Like, just think about it. Seriously, like, think about it. And I think it was a couple weeks after that I ended up breaking things off with him and just kind of saying, like, you know what? I'm up in college. I'm going to make my own life. I am in charge of my own story. And I don't need to marry you because I'm not stuck in Farmington, and I have so much more to life than just being this sad little girl that was raped at 14.
Yeah.
There is so much more to my story and so much more to who I am than just whatever you painted me to be, or whatever Mormonism painted me to be, or whatever my parents wanted me to be. And so I broke things off with him. He did try to get in contact with me a few times after that. He would message me on occasion, and sometimes I would respond and sometimes I wouldn't. What was wild is there was one time he texted me, and I think it was around my birthday, and he sent me this like novel of a paragraph, and I read it out loud to Jane because she was I read it out loud to Jane, and he told me in text message that he was so ashamed and he was so sorry because he wasn't over me. He said that he had moved to Chicago to do summer sales again. While he was in Chicago, he had gone to one of these classes that he had talked about, one of these OM group therapy, whatever classes. And he specifically asked to be paired up with this girl that looked like me. And he asked if he could call her Kate instead of what her name actually was. Just in this paragraph, it was just like word vomit of like, and I just miss you so much, and I just love you so much, and I felt so bad for doing it to this girl, but I just need you back because nothing compares to what it was like with you. And like all of these things. And I remember reading that and going, wow, I don't even think I responded to it. I think I just blocked him after that and was like, well, and we're closing this chapter now because that's scary. Like, that's
Yeah.
like if everything else wasn't bad enough, that That's terrifying.
Yeah.
Like, that is psychopathic behavior.
I'm so glad you were able to see that and that you were removed far enough from it all to really let it sink in for who he was.
Yeah, and I think if I hadn't gone to college, and I think if I hadn't met Jane, and Jane wasn't she's a very straightforward person. And she's very like, this is weird. Don't do that. I think honestly she saved my life, because I really genuinely believe that if I hadn't had her in my support system, and if I hadn't had the great friends that I had in college, that I wouldn't have been able to do that. I wouldn't have had the
Yeah.
strength to do that.
But you're still at BYU-Idaho.
And I'm
So Brigham Young University, one of the 3 universities, because there's the one in Utah, one in Idaho, and one in Hawaii.
Hawaii.
I know, because I wanted to go to BYU Hawaii so bad. I'm so glad I didn't.
I know a girl who actually did go
Oh,
to
geez.
Hawaii. Yeah.
So BYU-Idaho is known to be one of the most strict as far as the honor code system. We could spend hours talking about how backwards and twisted it is. And before anyone was like, just don't go to school there, there's so much tied into why people go. It could be the cost, because it's very inexpensive. They generally are very good schools and you get a great education. And it's tied up to the whole, if you're a good Mormon, you go to BYU and that's where you find a husband, because they're all Mormon and you have to be Mormon. But the rules are extensive. There are curfews, there are dress codes, men can't even go take a test if they're not shaved or have short enough hair. All of these really ridiculous things, and that's when you get loopholes like soaking are invented, because things get a little weird and repressed. So
Yeah.
you're almost graduated with an associate's degree, and then
So I had like 2 semesters left plus my student teaching, because I was in the early childhood education program. I had had some issues. This was after I had been diagnosed with my seizure disorder, so I took a semester off and then just kind of like regrouped my life. My parents really wanted me to come home, and I kind of wasn't feeling great about where I was at there. So, for people that don't know, you don't really have dorms at BYU Idaho. They just have like BYU approved apartments that like surround the campus, and you can pick which apartments you live in, and they all have different things. And so I had moved from Center Square, which is like really freshman-y, and it's more collegey, I guess, where you have like a dorm with a roommate. And then that's where I met Jane. We both moved to the Ridge, and the Ridge was kind of like a share house. So we shared an apartment. It had 6 bedrooms, 2 vanity bathrooms, and like a big kitchen and a laundry room. And so we moved there. So we all got our own bedroom and everything. But the other 4 girls that lived there, they I considered them friends up until that semester. But there was always like drama going on. Like there was always like, oh, so and so stole my shorts and she never gave them back. And, oh, so and so dyed her hair blonde because I have my hair blonde and she's just jealous of me. And it was always like, it was just stupid, petty girl things. And so me and Jane were really close. And Jane was kind of the only person that I really talked to in the apartment. But it was a fall semester, and I worked at a Denny's at the time. I worked like overnight as the manager there. And one of my friends who worked there, she had just gotten married, and she knew I was really crafty and that I liked to paint. And so she gave me the wine bottle from her wedding. And she said, "Hey, I saw this thing on Pinterest where people like paint the little wedding flowers on there, and then they can use the wine bottle as like the vase." And so she asked me to paint it for her. And I was like, "Yes, of course. Like, of course I would love to do that, you know?" And she was a non-member, but I loved her. And so she gave me the wine bottle, and I took it home, washed it out. There was no alcohol in it when I brought it home, but I washed it out and everything. You couldn't even smell alcohol on it. And I like took the little labels off because she just wanted me to paint the flowers on it. And I left it in the kitchen to dry. Well, that night, I guess they had a fire alarm inspection or something. And so the building manager came through all the rooms to like check the fire alarms with the maintenance people, and they saw the wine bottle in the kitchen. Instead of asking anybody in the apartment, instead of calling me, instead of anything, she literally went to the office, printed out eviction notices, and taped them to all of our bedroom doors and said we had 72 hours to move out. All of us, all 6 of us, because we had broken the honor code. Yeah.
Just the presence of
Evil.
An empty wine bottle. Yeah. And I've heard stories from other people that are like, oh, I had cooking wine in my fridge. Nothing ever happened to me. Okay, well, maybe your building manager wasn't a bitch then, because I hated her. I hated her with a passion. But anyway, yeah, so Jane calls me while I'm at work, and she's like crying, like freaking out. And she's like, oh my gosh, this just happened. And she was home when they posted the notices. And like, they didn't say anything to her. They just went and like taped them on all the doors and like left. So I pull up the lease and I'm like, first of all, that's illegal. You can't just say that we all have to leave in 3 days without talking to us about it when we didn't actually break any code, because the code is that you can't have alcohol on campus, right? I didn't have alcohol on campus. I had an empty wine bottle. And then also in our specific lease, I read it and it said that we were allowed the opportunity to cure. And then if we refused to cure the issue, then she could send us an eviction notice. She didn't talk to us. She didn't tell us anything. She didn't even ask whose it was. And to give an eviction notice to all 6 of us, that's wild.
Mm-hmm.
So I did the adult thing and I called her and I was like, yo, I'm just letting you know the wine bottle's mine. So you're not going to kick out everybody else. Like, if you have a problem with me, you can talk to me about it, because it says in your lease that you're supposed to talk to me about it. By the way, Miss Building Manager. And so she's like, okay, great. Like, thanks for being honest. You can let all of your roommates know that like they don't have to worry about it, but you still have to be out in 3 days. And I was like, hold the fuck up. I was like, this is not even like, I didn't have alcohol on campus. This is a wine bottle that I got from a friend. And I had my friend literally like email her and be like, no, this is like, here's the picture of the wine bottle at our wedding that I gave to her empty. It was a craft project. You can go get wine bottles at Goodwill to paint if you want to. Like, what? So, like I said, she was just a bitch. And she was like, nope, you have to leave. Da, da, da. I don't owe you an explanation. You don't have to be here if you don't want to be here. And if you have a problem with our policies, then like take it up with the housing office. So Jane and I both go, we bring a printed version of the lease. We bring a printed version of the like honor code policies. Like I'm ready to like throw down, and I'm like, here's all the facts and this is what happened. And she doesn't have a right to do this because this is wrong. Like, this is blatantly wrong. This lady at the housing office, she listens to my whole story and she looks at me and she goes, sister, I would love to help you, but it just doesn't seem like you're very remorseful. And I was like, no, I'm not remorseful because I'm not doing anything wrong.
Yeah.
I'm not. I don't deserve to be kicked out. And she goes, I had a young man come to me last semester because he had a nicotine addiction. And we found some of his vape pods in his bedroom during an inspection. And he sat at my desk and he just cried. And he told me that he was going to get help and he was genuinely sorry. So I helped that young man. And he's still attending here at BYU. But I don't think that's going to be an option for you if you just can't admit that what you're doing here is wrong.
Yikes.
And I was so floored. I was so angry. So for those who don't know, during that whole time, I walked out of the honor code office or the housing office and I was like, screw this, whatever. I'm just going to like find a new apartment. And so I'm like looking for a new apartment. I thought I was still going to be able to attend there. I thought I was at least going to finish my degree. But when you break the honor code, they launch an investigation and they will call in all of your roommates, the little honor code office will, and they ask them about what kind of person you are and if you've ever broken the honor code before and all of these things. But here's the kicker. They interviewed all of my other roommates except Jane. They refused to talk to her at all because she and I were friends. She wrote them a statement because they asked everybody in the apartment to write a statement. She wrote them a statement and submitted it. They emailed her back saying that they would not take her statement because she had a biased opinion about my character. And then she went and tried to have an in-person meeting with them, and they refused to meet with her. They refused to take a statement from my bishop, who had endorsed me, because, again, for those who don't know, you have to get an endorsement from your bishop before you go to BYU saying that you're like worthy enough to be there and all this stuff. So they refused to take a statement from my bishop, who had endorsed me to be there. And they just interviewed my 4 roommates that didn't like me, that I wasn't really friends with. I honestly don't know why they did this. I don't know what issues they had with me, but they told the honor code office that I had been a bartender, which I was at the time. I was working 2 jobs, so I was a manager at Denny's and I was bartending. So they said that I would disappear for days on end, and they just didn't know where I was. And I always came home smelling like beer. And I just locked myself in my room and would just not talk to anybody. And they were so concerned for me. And then they told the honor code that they had found pregnancy tests in my room, which wasn't true. And then they told the honor code that I was like hooking up with all these guys, and that I was like bringing people over to the apartment all the time, and that like just all of these things. And then they told them I was breaking curfew all the time, and that's a huge like no. Just ultimately there were like 16 different accusations against me, and they told me all of the accusations, and they said, okay, well, we want you to write a statement basically saying like what's your side of the story. And so I wrote a statement with my, proof of employment, with my time cards saying that I worked overnight, and I had written permission from the school to work overnight. I had statements from Jane, I had statements from my bishop, I had statements from my employer, from all of these people. And I wrote up this whole statement and I sent it to them, and they said, this statement actually isn't valid because we don't take character witnesses in statements. I want to know what the 4 statements from my roommates were then if they weren't character witnesses.
Uh-huh.
How do you not take character witnesses and not give me the opportunity to like plead my case when I have literally 20 people emailing you, telling you that I'm a good person, telling you that I'm following all the rules, and you don't take character witnesses? What? I can't. So then they call me into the honor code office, and I'm sitting there in front of this different lady, and she tells me that I have to plead my case pretty much, that I have to like apologize. She tells me that I have the opportunity to go home for the semester and come back after in a year. She said I had the opportunity to come back in a year if I apologized. And I told her to her face, I said, I'm not apologizing because I didn't do anything wrong. And they're lying. I said, you cannot tell me that you looked at all these facts and that you are so blind that you are refusing to see the logical conclusion. I said, are you really going to kick me out over a craft project and some bitches? And she gets all, uppity up in her chair, and she's like, we have standards here. And I said, yeah, I know. And it's been hella hard to live them, just by the way. Like, I've been having to jump through all these hoops for like 3 years. She's like, well, it just doesn't seem like this school is a good fit for you. And she's like, I really want to give you the best opportunity to be, as successful as you can. But if you're not even willing to, again, be remorseful and like admit that you're doing things wrong. And she asked me, and I just told her, I said, that's a lie. That's like, I'm doing all the things that I'm supposed to be doing. I have good grades. I go to all my classes. I work 2 jobs to support myself being here. You can't kick me out because I'm paying my way through school. And she pulls up the little paper and she goes, so you've never tasted alcohol before? Ever? And I was like, what? And she's like, well, you're a bartender. So I really don't believe that you haven't drank before. I kind of roll my eyes and I go, well, I know what alcohol tastes like if that's what you're trying to get out of me. But I don't drink on the job because, one, I'm 19 or 20 years old. That's illegal. Second of all, like, what does that even have to do with anything? Because I don't drink on campus and I don't drink at my work. So why does it really matter? And she goes, well, that's against the honor code. You can't taste alcohol. And she's like, and then your roommate said that you drink coffee and that you have a coffee maker in the apartment. And I said, just for the record, the coffee maker is communal and we all chipped in for that. Because literally all of us put in $20 for the freaking coffee maker. All of us put in $20 for the coffee maker. I was not the only one that drank coffee in that apartment. And I was like, yeah, I drink coffee. I work 2 jobs. What do you expect from me? And I said, but I suppose that's against the honor code too. And she goes, yeah, it is. And she goes, and I understand from your history that you've had sex before. And I was like, well, I'm not a virgin. I was so done with this lady. I was like, yeah, I'm not a virgin. What does it matter to you? I was like, and I looked at her and I said, do you want me to say that I was at 18 right before coming here? Because I already talked to my bishop about that and he already approved me to come here. Then I asked her, I said, do you kick out all of the girls that get raped on campus? And she goes, that's not relevant. And I said, and neither is my past. So if you're just going to bring up all of these things that are wrong with me and you're going to tell me that I'm not worthy enough to be here, then maybe I don't want to be a part of this school. And she's like, so are you resigning your application for next semester? And I said, I'm resigning my application for next semester. You can go ahead and expel me or do whatever the fuck you want because I don't want your degree anyway. And I said, and I will be putting in a complaint and I will be putting in I think I said I would be putting in a complaint, and I said that I would make sure to tell every single person I knew not to come here if this is the way that you treat your so-called students that you love, because this isn't love, and this isn't caring about people, and this is not what Christ taught. This is not Christ's church. And I went on this whole tangent, and I said, this is not Christ's church. This is not what the Bible teaches. This is not what the Book of Mormon teaches if you want to get into the Book of Mormon. This is not how this is supposed to be run, and how dare you take away children's opportunities to make a life for themselves. How dare you take away my opportunity to have a degree, to be a teacher, to do all of these things that I worked so hard for. Because I tasted alcohol once, because I was at 14, because you didn't think I was worthy enough, because I talked back one too many times. That's not a God I believe in. That's not a church I believe in. Yeah.
Good for you.
And I walked out and I never went back. I literally called my parents and my parents drove up to Idaho. We moved out like the next week and I never looked back.
Wow.
I went home.
So a lot of people have this slow fading and slow realizations. For you, it was like, nope, I'm done with BYU and I'm done with the Mormon church.
Yeah, pretty much. I was like, fuck this shit. And I had like kind of little moments in my life where I was like, I don't know about this. I don't know.
Yeah.
This is kind of weird. But I had always been able to kind of explain it away. But after that, I was like, nope, screw this. I'm done. This is not something I want to be a part of.
And is that when you allowed yourself to explore women?
Yeah. So I actually explored women a little bit in college.
Okay.
I always knew I was bisexual. But it's not, it's obviously not something that is talked about in the church, They always say that like people that have homosexual tendencies just have different trials in this life and they just need to overcome it and still get married, to people that they're not attracted to, which is weird. So I had explored the idea of dating women a little bit, but I had never dated a woman. And so when I came home, I was still actively dating men, but I think I was just kind of done people pleasing. And I just kind of said, fuck this. Whatever God has planned for me, it's going to happen because none of my plans work out anyway. So I'm just going to do what I want. And it's going to work out one way or another. It was about 6 months after I got home, I started dating my girlfriend. And again, we met in the YSA ward. We both grew up Mormon. And it was like a crazy coincidence because we had been friends and we would talk like occasionally, but I don't know. I always knew that I liked her, but I didn't think that she was a lesbian. And I certainly wasn't going to admit that I was a lesbian. So she actually told me when I got back, we were sitting together in church and she like walked me out to my car and she wore a suit that day, like a whole like 3-piece
Nice.
suit. And I was like, holy shit, this girl hot. Oh my God, this girl's so hot. But like my boyfriend's like right over there. And so like I can't, you know. And she told me, she's like, so I have something to tell you. And I was like, okay. And she's like, so I'm a lesbian. And I remember going, oh my God, me too. And I was like, wait, well, like, I'm bisexual. Like, I like girls too, but like, that's great for you. You know, like that's awesome for you. And like, I was so like giddy and like happy about it because I was like, oh my God, she likes girls too. And she's like, I don't think she told me that she had feelings for me then, but she did tell me later on that she had feelings for me and she had a little bit of crush on me. And I was like, oh my God, me too. But like, not like that. But like, I really like you as like a person, you know? And it took me a while to be open to the idea of like dating her, like seriously, but we went out on dates and I dated both men and women for a while. And then 4th of July, we talked about it and I asked her to be my girlfriend. And we've been together ever since. We're coming up on a year and we've lived together for about a year now as well. We were true U-Haul lesbian. True U-Haul lesbians. We were like, great, we're dating and now we're going to move in together. And just kind of ever since then, I've been deconstructing Mormonism and deconstructing Christianity. I identify as like a non-denominational Christian. I have a very strong testimony of like God and Jesus Christ and all of those things. But as far as like the details go, I think they're all just details. And I think if there is an afterlife after this, I can't imagine a God saying, you don't get into heaven because you didn't pick the right church, you know? The God that I believe in is loving and is merciful, and I think the things that make me who I am all happened for a purpose and a reason, and I don't ever want them to hold me back.
What about your mom though? Does she know that you have a girlfriend?
Yeah, she knows.
How did she react?
I came home from college and I was like, I'm not hiding anything about myself anymore, ever. Like, I'm just gonna be me. So I told my mom straight up, I was like, yeah, Vi and I are going on a date. And she was like a play date, right? And I was like, no, Mom, like a date.
There will be play. If I'm lucky.
Yeah, and I think it kind of helped the transition because Vi and I had been friends before. And so she like started coming over for family dinner. We have family dinner every Sunday, and you know, we go over to my parents' house and my parents are civil. I can tell my mom doesn't like it. And occasionally my mom gets a wild hair up her butt and says, you know, well, you should just date men and you just need to keep yourself open to the opportunity of like a man coming into your life. And I was like, Mom, I'm going to do what I'm going to do. I always tell her, you know, I love you and thank you for the advice. But for right now, I'm happy where I'm at. And that's all I can tell her.
Okay. So how have things been? That wasn't that long ago that all of this happened. So you feel
Yeah.
pretty good in your deconstruction journey with Mormonism, with everything that happened with OneTaste and all of that?
I know that I still have a lot of work to do because deconstruction, I think, is a lifelong journey, and healing is a lifelong journey. You don't just go to therapy 1 or 2 or 10 times and then say, okay, I'm healed now. I
Yeah.
think it's something that you're always continually working on. And so I feel comfortable in where I'm at now saying that I'm working on it and I'm happy with the progress that I've made so far. And I think this, this interview is like a huge step for me in deconstructing even just that experience. Because this is the first time that I've really sat down and laid it all out for somebody, exactly how it happened and how I was manipulated and how, the things I feel guilty about, but also the things that I know weren't my fault.
Yeah.
And that feels really good.
Yeah. What made you decide to come on and share?
I wanted to let other people know you don't have to be ashamed of who you are. And even if you have experiences that are not great, that are not perfect, that you wish wouldn't have happened, you don't have to let them define you, but you also don't have to hide from them. I feel like too often we paint this picture of, oh, don't let your experiences define you, but also you don't tell anybody about your experiences. Or if you do tell people about your experiences, then they say, oh, well, you're just being a victim your whole life. I'm not a victim. I've made the decision very early on that I was not a victim, and I take responsibility for my part in certain things, but I also know that the stories that make up my life are not something to be ashamed of. They're something that I can use to help other people and to propel me through life rather than hold me back.
Yes. I have to add, I'm all for accountability, and what happened to you was not your fault. People who abuse others will abuse them regardless of what they're saying, wearing, doing. It was not your fault.
Thanks.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I
Abusers
had
are
to add
abusers
that
no matter what.
because when
Yeah.
you said I take responsibility for my part, and I was like, oh, no. I just had to
No,
say that.
I meant,
Like,
yeah, I meant I take responsibility for like the fact that because I did have several opportunities to leave. There were parts where I actively chose to stay, but again, that was all part of the manipulation.
yeah.
And it was all part
Yeah.
of the tech. That's what manipulators do. They make you feel like you have to stay.
Right.
And
So yes and no.
yeah.
It
Yes
wasn't your
and
fault.
no.
Things potentially maybe in another life could have been slightly different had you made different choices. And I don't believe you are fully capable and in the right mindset and headspace to make different decisions.
Right.
So how about that?
Oh.
Okay. Well, how are you doing now? How are you feeling? What brings you
I
joy?
feel good. My dog.
Show me your dog.
My
Bring the
dog
dog
brings me
in.
joy.
Bring the dog in.
Oh, she's been sleeping at my feet like this whole time. But
Oh,
this is Dixie.
look at her little fluffy face. Tell everyone why this dog is important to you.
So she is actually my girlfriend bought her for me for my birthday. And she's actually in training right now to be a seizure alert dog. So she's 4 months old and she does really good most of the time. Yeah, she's in training to be a seizure alert dog. So she's gonna be service now.
Amazing. I love that. Well, I'm proud of you for how far you've come. You're only 22 years old, aren't you?
Yeah, I'm 22.
Yeah. You've experienced a lot and come a long way at such a young age. And that's not to try and infantilize you like, oh, you're such a baby. I hate when people do that to me. But you've come, what I mean is in the opposite sense of you've done a lot of healing and a lot of growing, and you're clearly in such a great headspace now from where you were before in such a short time. So, I mean, that is a compliment. And it's great that you reached out to us and that you are wanting to share your story with everybody.
Yeah. I tell people I'm convinced I'm gonna die young because like my life so far is just a freaking whirlwind. Like I'm convinced I'm gonna die at like 50 or something crazy.
No, girl, don't say that.
Because that's how much more can you pack in my lifetime? Like, really?
Trust me, I
How
get
many
it.
more experiences?
I'm writing a book on my experience, and I'm like, I'm gonna have to cut all this out. There's just not enough room to say all the
Yeah,
crazy things that have happened to me. And it's just, yeah, I haven't even scratched the
yeah.
surface on this channel about the other stuff that I've been involved in and crazy gurus. And it's just so much. But anyway, enough about me. Let's get your Linda Listen moment.
I had a really hard time like deciding what I wanted to say for my Linda Listen, but I think I know what I want to say. And it's something my dear sweet grandma used to tell me all the time. And I'm gonna cry when I say it because I always cry when I say it. But Linda, listen. Tomorrow is a new day with no mistakes in it. And you can wake up every day and make the choice to be whoever you want to be. No matter what people tell you, no matter what people think about you, no matter what people say, you get to wake up every single day because every day is a gift and choose the kind of person that you want to be. And it is never too late to reclaim your story or to start over.
That's beautiful. She's a smart lady. I'm sure you miss her very much, and her words live on through you and now through this podcast, through everyone who has heard them.
Thanks.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, thank you for coming on and sharing. I know we could talk for another few hours. There's so much I'm sure we didn't even get to, but I appreciate you coming on and sharing a glimpse into two different cults, or almost getting involved in another one, but still being affected by it, obviously. And I think that was another reason I wanted to showcase your story, was because you don't have to be in a cult to be affected by it negatively. And
Yeah.
your story is a perfect example of that, how someone's harmful ideology transferred onto you and you weren't even directly involved. So it's just good to put that awareness out there for people to always stay alert and always keep your critical thinking brain on, and always be aware of the red flags, not to live in hyper awareness and just anxiety your whole life, but just to keep a good head on your shoulders and to really try and notice when things feel off and to pay attention to those achy feelings, because we definitely know, our body knows when something feels off. And so following that and not getting caught up in the indoctrination of being submissive or just go with the flow or be agreeable or whatever other programming might be running in the background.
Yeah. I can tell you my life got so much better when I decided that I wasn't going to allow anyone to tell me who I needed to be. So, yeah, just listen to your intuition.
Linda,
We have
listen.
it for a reason.
Yes.
Listen.
How can people find you if they want to reach out?
So people can find me on like Instagram. It's just at katiekins._ It's a picture of me and my girlfriend as my profile picture. So yeah. I also run a small business. I run a baking business. So if you want to look me up on there, it's just Confections by Kate with a dot in between each word. So people can reach out to me through both of those.
Great. Well, thank you for coming on, Katie. Any final thoughts before you go? Before we go?
I think if I add any more final thoughts, we're going to be here for another hour.
Sounds
Yeah.
good. Sounds good. Thank you guys so much for listening. If you made it to the end of this episode, know that there are two. If you missed the first episode, definitely go back and watch that and leave those words of encouragement down below. It means so much to us, so much to our guests. It supports the podcast, shows the algorithm that you care and that other people should too. So any way that you can interact is the best way to support. If you want to support further, we do have a Patreon at patreon.com/cults2consciousness. We have some merch, as Katie mentioned. I'm sorry for what I said when I was in a cult. That's our best-selling t-shirt. We have that at cults2consciousness.com under the merch tab. We have a shorts channel if you like to ingest shorter form content, around 10 to 15 minutes, little excerpts of our long form content. You can check that out. Links, all of that will always be in the description. If you want to go to Mexico end of October. Click to find the itinerary in the description as well. If you like this episode, again, make sure you listen to Katie's first episode if you haven't already. I'll link 2 more down here below that you can check out. And until next time, follow your highest excitement, be conscious, and be well.